Anglo American Platinum, Amplats, has offered to facilitate a return to work for all employees by no later than tomorrow. Amplats employees will return to work on the same terms and conditions of employment as applied before the illegal strike. Compare this with Atlatsa Resources, who's offered to pay striking miners at its Bokoni Platinum mine a once-off payment of 2,000 Rand to urge them to return to work by Thursday. Now, Amplats closed down 1.5% to just below 400 Rand today. Bridget?
It's quite interesting. They're not going to negotiate in terms of the wage settlement because that was agreed with before. What was quite interesting, though, is that they have to return to work by tomorrow, but they will be given a final written warning, as well as the fact that they'll be given a come back to work 2,000 Rand incentive. Those that remained at work, though, will also be given that 2,000 Rand, and then they can access some money going, I think it's into the beginning of next year, up to 2,500 Rand to help alleviate some of the costs that they've borne over this period. So I think they've been quite lax, but they're putting their foot down and saying if they don't return to work, yes, it's the end of the road.
What does a final written warning means? If they go on strike again, they're gone.
So it has to be for the same,
so.
same offence.
For the same offence, I would imagine so.
And isn't Amplats going to be conducting a whole review of their operations and then ultimately decide whether or not they're going to keep the same number of operations? So you could have a situation where everybody comes back to work, it costs you some money, etc., and then you go through another round of cutbacks.
That's where we headed, aren't we?
And it does feel as if the mines are going to have to restructure in terms of the prices just not responding enough to make these operations profitable. So I don't think we've heard, if the miners come back, I really don't think we've heard the end of this.
And at the same time, still pressure from the top. If you think of what happened on Friday with Cynthia Carroll resigning and the PIC wading into this, and yes, we're unhappy with the structure of the board, for instance, wanting greater emerging market representation.
Sorry, they don't own the company anymore. You know, it's foreigners that own it, and I think that I see Zuma came out with a statement. Yeah, they're big shareholders, but they're not dominant shareholders. You know, they've got no control over it. It's not a South African company. It's owned by foreigners. You know, who will decide where they invest and who the next board is. You know, just accept that.
Yes.
I think that it's, you know, what the big risk here is that, unfortunately, at the end of the day, a business has to run as a business. It has to make a profit and it's accountable to its shareholders. Now, when you're in a scenario that we've just been faced with, you've got massive losses that you've got to come back from in terms of the mining production that wasn't in place for the last 6 weeks or almost 2 months, as well as the fact that now you're having to employ people or put them back on your payroll and incentivize them to come back to work. At some point, there's going to be some give. And unfortunately, it's going to be those very people that will ultimately bear the price.